One more time. Just listen to this.
We just want our respect. Rob wants his respect. Coach Vogel wants his respect. Our organization wants their respect. Laker Nation wants their respect. And I want my damn respect, too.
Looking at your faces right now, that's definitely something that gets a reaction. It's the exclamation point on this surreal season and year and bubble and rebirth for LeBron and the Lakers. So I don't need to say any more. Around the horn to Pablo Torre, what does it all mean?
It means that LeBron James, Tony, is not only a person who, if you sold stock in him at any point in the last decade, you're a fool. It means that this guy is unlike anyone else in NBA history. And I know Michael Jordan's the logical comparison, but leave aside the GOAT debate for a second. No one has been able to be transplanted, dropped into a franchise, 3 different franchises at this point, and just won a title in 2 years. That's what he did. And so this game, this defensive effort, his all-around game, it wasn't surprising, but when you put it all into context, just recognize no one else is a cheat code like this, and no one else will ever be again a cheat code like this, while being the most underpaid man in the NBA, in pro sports actually, altogether, because yes, his salary is still capped, and he should probably be making like $80 million a year for doing what he did.
Okay, but to you, what does I want my damn respect to mean, Pablo?
It means that people still underestimate him. People still don't see him as not only a competitor to Jordan, but also being this guy, Tony, who is underpaid, who is so much more than the conventional wisdom is, which is stunning because, by the way, his nickname, I know, is King, right? Yet, still, he is underestimated.
Kevin Blackistone, what did you hear from LeBron last night, and what did you see in this championship number 4 for him?
It means that it is unfair to use a reductive critique of his career. I just do not understand it. Let's measure this man on his own merits, what he's achieved, what he's accomplished in basketball, in professional basketball in particular. You know, people lately, they want to downgrade him because he played with Anthony Davis. Well, you know what? No one has ever played with a guy like LeBron James who has played with a guy like LeBron James, right? So that has elevated them as well, too. I mean, Anthony Davis is a guy who has played great in the playoffs for a previous team and was unable to get anywhere close to as far as he got playing next to a guy like LeBron James. I mean, so I understand that, you know, he's a guy that he's in the media. He listens to the media. He's on social media. He hears the critique of him. He hears the unnecessary comparison of him to other people. Appreciate this man for what he has done. It's amazing.
Sarah Spain?
Yeah, I think in the moment, the respect is this is not an asterisk bubble win. This season took almost an entire year from start to finish. He switched to point guard in his 17th season and led the league in assists for the first time. He played defensively focused basketball from start to finish for one of the first times. And he led a group of guys, many of whom said after he got past 1 and 2 weren't worth a thing. This guy is incredible for what he just did. And then bigger picture, of course, it's the respect of stop comparing me to something else. I spent my entire life in the shadow of a great player, but why are we wasting our time only comparing everything to that?
This is incredible for me to hear from everybody. So now the GOAT debate is reductive. I like that word, Kevin Blackistone, but it's also something we should not be doing at all.
Well, I think the GOAT debate has always been stupid. Different eras, different rules, different players, different everything, different movement. All of it has been stupid. But the problem now is that because we're so intent on being right and stubborn, people will go out of their way to find the one stat that will allow them to dislike LeBron or not enjoy watching him or undercut what he's done. And that's stupid. You can think Michael's better if you want to, but not to the point where you don't enjoy what you're watching with LeBron. What a waste.
Well, I guess we can't have the GOAT debate now or ever again on this show after what I just heard. But let me say this, Clinton. Jackie McMullen said last week on our show that this would be his most impressive win, the bubble season being that difficult. I have a hard time believing winning for Cleveland and coming back from 3-1 wasn't number one for him, but how do you see it?
Think about it this way. Think about not just what he did for himself and his legacy. Let's start right there with the Los Angeles Lakers, arguably one of the most important franchises in the NBA that had missed the playoffs for the better part of a decade before he got there. He brings that back from a complete disaster. Reminder, Magic Johnson himself walked away from that franchise. It was as bad as it ever had been. Then the late, great Kobe Bryant, one of the best players of our generation, passes away. He stewards that all the way through to the playoffs. Next thing you know, COVID breaks out. He keeps that team team led, he keeps that team motivated, and then he wins it, you're absolutely right. It's the most impressive thing. His personal legacy aside, he's important to the NBA. He's important to that franchise. As for him, if you're talking about Jordan now, it feels like somebody trying to program a computer with an abacus. It's just not the same. After 2020, after everything we've dealt with, it's not the same world that LeBron James is living in, and he's managed to excel in this one as well. He's the best basketball player you've ever seen in your life. Don't ever forget it.
Wow, programming a computer with an abacus.
Well, I think we just did the GOAT debate.
Well, you did, but he did it in such an artful way, Yates. It was very good. Can I get everyone else, Pablo Torre, on the idea this was his most impressive?
Yeah, I don't think it was his most impressive because keep in mind, he came back from a 3-1 deficit against the premier dynasty in the NBA in the Golden State Warriors, right? That, to me, is the premier finals experience for LeBron James. What this does do, though, is add variety. He can win any kind of finals, a finals without fans, with a home court advantage, with all the chaos of the bubble. And what Clinton just said, he'll win that one. He'll win down 3-1. He'll win with the Miami Heat with the big three. He will do it however you want him to.
He'll win one with the franchise that is now saying they have tied the Celtics for the most championships ever. They're taking credit for Minneapolis? Are we giving them credit for Minneapolis? Because that's 17 if you count the Minneapolis
Just
Lakers.
like the Lakes. Just like the Lakes.
Yeah, they don't hang Mike and Jersey from the rafters. I don't know how all of a sudden they got those. Well, you know, we have a discussion every year when someone wins a title. Can they repeat next year? And it's silly, but because you never know what's going to happen the next year. Case in point, this season, it's been over a year since they reported to camp, but they've been installed as the favorites. And with a maybe shorter season or a later season, does that mean they have a better chance with LeBron going into year 18, Sarah?
First of all, I love that he's been installed as a favorite for a season that does not have a start date, and we have no idea when it's going to happen. But yeah, my gut instinct is, yeah, they should be the favorites. They're coming off of this. But I also do wonder, after all of this, if you don't have a full offseason to regain the fire to want to win again, how hard it is to get yourself mentally ready to try to do it again like 2 months later.
How many straight times has he made the finals? If anybody is the favorite in the history of, I mean, I'm saying, like, when he played, if anybody is the favorite in the history of the league to get back to the finals after having made it, it's LeBron James because he goes all the time, as evidenced by his career, as we just discussed. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely agree with Clinton. I mean, who has this guy? I like that team.
Okay.
Of course they can get back.
And one more quick hitter. The run that the Miami Heat just went on. I know we didn't bring it up here. We have talked about it for the last month. But Jimmy Butler's elevation and also the young roster of this team, were they primed to be a team of the future, Pablo Torre, in your estimation?
I think they're a piece away. I think they emptied the gas tank entirely. Jimmy Butler showed that he is, in fact, a superstar in this league, but they need somebody else. If they get somebody else, then yes. But short of that, they're going to struggle, I think, to do this insane run in a perhaps non-bubbled environment again.
What a run, though. What a season. And what a, I mean, no positive tests for coronavirus as well in this bubble for the NBA. And everything that went with it. We've been horrible. We're going to move on now. The latest on Dak Prescott. Last night's surgery called a success. But the season is over. And immediately on the field, you could see it on his face, his teammates' faces. Jason Garrett, who came over from the other sideline's face. They all knew it was over. But also they knew this. He never signed long-term. And the Cowboys spent $193 million on other players this past year, $182 million the year before that. Dak Prescott now hurt and without a contract after this season's franchise tag. Tim Cowlishaw wrote for the Dallas Morning News today that this wasn't unthinkable because of the world of professional football, but everyone's at risk. But there was an otherworldly nature to it. Can you take that in, Kevin Blackistone, and tell us what you saw when you saw Prescott on the field?
Well, I turned away immediately, just like I did just now, because I just couldn't stomach watching it again. You know, your first reaction is to the humanity of the moment. People who think that athletes don't care or they're impervious to pain, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, there it all was right in front of you. And then, you know, you think later about the contractual situation. And I thought about a friend of mine in Texas, a guy named Jimmy Shelby, I used to play basketball with, who's one of the greatest running backs in the history of high school football in the state of Texas, who got a scholarship to go to Texas A&M. And in an all-star game before he got to Texas A&M, completely had his knee shredded, never played a down. Texas A&M stood up and gave him his scholarship anyway. That's college. This is pros. Who's going to give Dak Prescott $111 million that he left on the table last year with the Dallas Cowboys, gambling on himself? It's really a sad situation. I wish the NFL could figure out some way to correct these kind of contracts for these players who suffer these sorts of injuries.
Sarah Spain, where were your thoughts when you saw Dak Prescott on the field?
Yeah, I agree with KB. I think the all or nothing thing is difficult, but this is no one's fault. The Cowboys gave him what they thought he deserved. He wanted more or different. They decided they would move forward with what they have, and this is a terrible, untimely, unthinkable injury. But anyone who's yelling at either the Cowboys now or were yelling at Dak when he didn't want to sign don't understand the business of sports. That they get to fight for what they want, and when this happens, it's just terrible timing. I feel awful for him, and I hope that this is something that all the statements that the Cowboys are making now are accurate, where they say we know he's going to come back and be a part of us and lead us to greatness in the future.
Clint Yates?
KB is exactly right. It was tough to look at, but I think that the otherworldliness that Kalashaw was referring to is that, quite frankly, most people looking at that probably don't think that Dak's ever going to play another down again. There are not a lot of people coming back from hardcore injuries like that, and I've seen guys' careers end on the field. The look on his face was one that did not just indicate he was in pain physically. It looked like he might never see this position ever again. I pray for this dude, and I hope it does happen. But them's the breaks, and I think everybody's right, man. You fight for yourself, and sometimes you don't get it. Sometimes you do. This is a very
I
unfortunate
haven't
story.
seen the reporting to be exactly like you just said it right there, Clinton Yates. You know, a 6 to 12 month injury. You've seen former players like Connor Barwin tweet out, I had this exact thing. This happened to me. I was back. You're going to be back better than ever. And also his age, you know, being where it is. Not many have said the severity of what you just said, that you wonder if his career.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I'm telling you the feeling that came to mind when I
Understood.
saw his face and when everybody else reacted.
And Pablo Torre?
Yeah, the visual felt apocalyptic, but I do think this is a season ender and not a career ender. And if you're the Cowboys, this is what you know about Dak Prescott now. At the time he got hurt, he had more passing yards through that many games, more passing yards than anybody ever had at this point. So I think they're going to end up paying him. I hope that, to KB's point, the public sympathy helps nudge them in that direction even more, because I think it's overdue. But in Dak Prescott for the future, I think they have their franchise quarterback even still.
Yes, Kevin Black is for the last word.
I was just going to say, but it's such a cold game, and I remember the cold game that was played with Kenny Norton Jr. right there in Dallas, right there with this owner, when he ripped his bicep going into the playoffs. They pleaded with him not to get season-ending surgery. He strapped it up, played, was almost the MVP of the Super Bowl, and you know what?
4th and inches to run out the game, or field goal to go up 8, guarantee you're not losing in the last 2 minutes, I guess. Went for it, stuffed, and then Russell Wilson goes 94 yards, multiple 4th-down connections to DK Metcalf, and ball game. The probabilities for go or kick and all the variables included were incredibly close, incredibly high to win, and still it's a loss. Clinton Yates, did Zimmer make the right call?
I think he did, in the rain with no crowd, a bad team trying to become a mediocre team. You got to go for that and prove to yourselves that you can win it. Alas, he ran into Russell Wilson, who all he does is come back and win football games, because that's a great team.
Spain?
I'm going back and forth on this, and in the end, I think if you have a guy that you're playing that scored 3 touchdowns in a minute 46 earlier in the same game, then you're pretty much certain that he's going to come down and score on you. And if that's the case, at least preserve a tie. Make him get down there and get the 2-point conversion and fight it out.
Right.
In
So
OT.
you would have kicked and extended the game at least to overtime should everything have gone wrong. KB, how about you?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to kick it. Remember, you're also going with a backup running back who you didn't think you were going to be riding at that point in this game. So you got to kick the ball. You got to make Russell Wilson do things. Russell Wilson throws probabilities out the window. That is what his career is all about.
Pablo Torre.
But I need to incentivize aggression and risk-taking here. I don't want to shame Mike Zimmer here, because I want more coaches to do exactly that. And by the way, the reason he did it is because he respects Russell Wilson, because Russell Wilson probably is not just going to get the 2-point conversion. In overtime, he's probably going to score again. So the whole point is get it while you can, and it didn't work, but he should try it the next time too.
Buy or sell 2, Alex Smith's return to the field yesterday for Washington after 17 surgeries. The risk of amputation, the risk of death after infection. That was very real for Smith. Many reporters posting he's already won Comeback Player of the Year. Many others found it hard to watch, knowing what he went through, and to see him getting hit hard over and over again by Aaron Donald and the Rams. He was sacked 6 times in his more than half of a game. This is a professional cleared to play and making a decision on his own volition to want to play. Sarah Spain, I'm looking at the face you're making here. How did you see Smith's return?
I knew what was going to happen on those replays, and it still made me cringe, which is how I watched it. I was very happy for him that this thing he worked for manifested itself in actually being out on the field and proving to himself and others that he could do it, and his kids, which he said was important. I also cringed the whole time and couldn't take my eyes off him, was so worried for him and his teammates and even his opponents for what the situation was.
Kevin Blackistone, he made this decision. How did you feel seeing it?
I know, and I was like Sarah. I couldn't watch it either. I mean, it was cringe worthy, and I think about him like I do about Jordan Reed. 7 concussions that we know of, and yet comes back to play. And I was hoping that somebody would say, "No, we're not going to sign you for the own goodness of your health," right? But this is what football players do.
Pablo, I saw you online talking about this yesterday, and the risk that is it for every athlete on every single play. We saw it with Dak Prescott just hours later. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I want to make clear I've been rooting for Alex Smith, man, on this show for 8 years now. Yeah. But in this case in particular, Tony, that cringing, it really logically should apply to everything we watch in football. The idea that these guys are consenting to risk their lives on every single play. It's not just Alex Smith doing that. He's just the guy maybe who wants it more than anybody else we've ever seen in the game.
Yates.
He's also the guy that probably got an opportunity that nobody else would have gotten. He had guaranteed money still on that deal. Some people believe, unfortunately, that the only reason he was even allowed to work that hard and that meticulously to get back is because Dan owed him money and he wanted to hang out with him too when he watched football, which is kind of sad.
Sarah Spain, Pablo Torre, thanks for your thoughts today. Quick out for you guys. Kevin Blackistone, Clinton Yates. Showdown in 2 minutes. Plus another 2 minutes after that. Naming random words. Alabama, Ole Miss had Saban walking off the field victorious, but letting up 48 and thinking somebody was stealing plays. There were about 5 other jaw-dropping things in Week 6, including Florida coach Dan Mullen wanting big crowds now because of what happened to his team against the big crowd this weekend at A&M. Clinton, what result means most?
This has to be Texas, Oklahoma. Not only did we get vintage Gus Johnson, we got the meme of 2020. One woman surrender Cobra, another one flipping the bird to the can. That's what this year's been about. Come on now.
KB?
It's Texas, Oklahoma. It's also the other game where you got Saban. Remember when Saban used to complain about high-scoring offenses and used to point his finger at the big? Everybody's doing this now. Let's see what happens when the Pac-12 and the Big Ten come back.
Meme of 2020. Point Clinton Yates. Showdown 2, Raiders 40, Kansas City 32. Vegas being the champs with big passes. And by picking off Mahomes and holding Mahomes to the lowest completion percentage of his career. KC's first loss in 11 months. KB, more about Kansas City or Vegas?
Oh, it's more about Kansas City. This is a one big bad game. Look what happens when you actually pressure a quarterback, no matter how good he is. Even he can look pedestrian. That's
Remember last week when Carr was all upset about how well the team was doing? He put it on his own back, 11.2 yards per attempt, and he won this daggone game. I like the way the Raiders turned this around.
Point Clinton Yates. Showdown. Derek Carr, Kevin. Showdown 3, the AFC North. Is it the best division in football? The Browns 4-1. Baltimore's 4-1. Pittsburgh's 4-0, and they have a superhuman rookie trolling Tom Brady. Chase Claypool. Primus with this meme troll. Clinton, who's your king in the North as of right now?
It's still the Ravens. They're the best team. The Steelers have an 800-yard, 5-touchdown rookie every year. And, of course, the Browns are the most exciting. But the Lamar Jackson show is still the best in America.
Never sleep on those Steelers, ever. Mike Tomlin knows how to get it done. And they got a 60-year-old quarterback who's still upright and throwing that ball around.
If the students from Texas were the meme of the year, then Chase Claypool trolling Brady is number 2. Point, though, Clinton Yates. FaceTime, Clinton Yates.
On today's National Indigenous Peoples Day, I